We love to see our favorite superheroes take on our favorite bad guys in feats of immeasurable strength and power. There's something satisfying about seeing two superpowered beings go toe to toe. Today, we're going to do just that. Today, we're going to take a look at my top favorite fights of all time. Fair warning though, there will be spoilers in this video, so I don't want to hear anybody cry or complain or whine in the comments section that I ruined a moment or something like that, so you've been warned. With that said, let's do this. Rounding out the top of my list is Batman vs Superman in The Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns tells the story of a 55-year-old Bruce Wayne who is coming out of retirement to fight the corruption that has plagued Gotham City. At the end of the book, Batman squares off against Superman, who has basically become a government puppet, in a knockdown, drag-out slugfest that culminates in the Dark Knight beating Superman and stating one of the most iconic lines in comics: "I want you to remember that I'm the one man who beat you." At the time of release, nobody had seen a Batman that was that vicious, that brutal, and that cold, that would be willing to kind of go that extra line that he's really never crossed before. No, he doesn't really kill anybody, but damn if he doesn't really come close in this book. To many comic fans, The Dark Knight Returns was a bit of a redemption story because a few years prior we had something called the Batman TV show starring Adam West, and well, they took more of a campy approach to the character, and oh, the Bat-Tootsie kinda speaks for itself. Next up on my list is a battle between two great DC villains, Sinestro versus Mongol. Mongol is essentially great value Darkseid. Both look the same, they're space dictators, and have similar powers, except one of them is yellow. During the character's time in Peter Tomasi's run on the Green Lantern Corps, the character is given a yellow power ring. Mongol, being the power-hungry bastard that he is, decides that one ring isn't enough, so he hunts down more rings and eventually takes over the Sinestro Corps through brute force. And if that wasn't enough, Mongol then makes the very, very stupid and big mistake of conquering Sinestro's home planet of Kruger. You see folks, eventually when you take over a guy's home planet and the organization he's named after, that guy's gonna show up. What follows is a prime example of why you do not fuck with Sinestro. At the beginning of the fight, things are not going so well for the great Green Lantern villain Sinestro, and he's being thrown around his own planet like a ragdoll. However, things take a turn, because Mongol forgets one valuable fact: he's using Sinestro's rings against him. It's basically like guppies and sharks against Aquaman. Sinestro initiates the override sequence on Mongol's rings, and the rings launch poles into Mongol's body. As if that wasn't enough, Sinestro then finishes off Mongol in the most badass fashion by dropping the Yellow Lantern power battery on the guy's head while using a pun that would make Arnold Schwarzenegger blush. I'm gonna be completely honest, guys, the first time I read this, I stood up and applauded. This is such a huge scene for me from Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run. I absolutely love it, and it was just such a standout moment for me that I think I will always remember the first time I read it. This next one on my list is a throwdown that chances are if you've only been reading comics for a bit, or if you've only been reading the big two, you haven't read. Coming in at number 3 is Invincible vs Conquest. The comic centers around the character of Mark Grayson, a famed superhero slash teenager that is the son of one of the greatest heroes of all time, who also happens to be an alien from a species of world-conquering beings called Viltrumites. At the beginning of this fight, Mark is helping out recovery efforts after a long, hard-fought battle when, out of nowhere, this old man shows up and proclaims that Mark has been appointed the Viltrumite agent of the planet and has been placed in charge of preparing it for takeover. This, of course, doesn't sit well with Mark, and what follows is a fight that would make Zack Snyder basically cream his pants. The fight is simply brutal. Teeth get broken, arms are snapped, the works. If this isn't enough, the way that Mark ends up beating Conquest was simply one of the biggest fuck yeah moments that I've ever read in comics. So much so that I won't even ruin it here. As a side note, I applaud superstar Ryan Otley because dismemberment has never looked so damn good. Coming in at number 2, we have the fight that would end up breaking death itself for comics. Of course, I'm talking about Superman vs. Doomsday. What many fans regarded as Superman's greatest and most defining battle, Superman finally meets his match when he is pitted against the unstoppable killing machine known as Doomsday. At the beginning of the comic, Superman is fighting underworlders, and we cut to this being that has just been woken up from his slumber. The first thing that he does? He crushes a baby bird. This is of course done to show you just how little Doomsday gives a damn about the life of the beings that are around him. Eventually, the Justice League International steps in to try and stop the being, but each one of them gets systematically taken down until all that's left is the Man of Steel. This is one of those fights that if you were a kid growing up in the 80s and the 90s, blew your damn monkey mind. Every single page was a splash page, and finally getting a chance to see Superman go full out on a bad guy was such a big treat. Eventually, the fight would get taken to the city of Metropolis, where Superman would beat Doomsday, but the toll of the fight was too much for the character, and he ends up dying in Lois Lane's arms. The impact was so huge from this fight that it made news outlets, fans wrote in letters, and there were lines of people standing outside of comic shops. Eventually, Superman would come back and break death itself in comics, but fans will always remember that first time they picked up Death of Superman and saw those two titans duke it out. I know I do. So at this point, you're probably wondering, what could be my favorite fight? The one fight that tops all of them for me. I give you Thanos versus the entire Marvel Universe in the Infinity Gauntlet. What do you get when you have a being that is about an inch away from being a god who's in love with death itself, limitless power? You get Thanos in the Infinity Gauntlet miniseries. Thanos is able to get his hands on all 5 of the Infinity Gems, yes, they're gems, not stones in the comics, granting him basically godlike powers. It isn't until Thanos, with the snap of his fingers, wipes out half the population of Earth in order to impress Mr. Death that we see the true weight of the situation at hand. Eventually, what's left of the entire Marvel comic universe joins forces to stop the Mad Titan. However, Thanos, wielding the gauntlet, quickly dispatches with everyone except for Captain America and a handful of Earth's mightiest heroes. We then get what is essentially my favorite Captain America moment in a comic, where Cap is basically staring down death itself and states, "As long as one man stands against you, Thanos, you will never be able to claim victory." It's a moment that defines Cap so well that I hope we get to see it in the Infinity War movie. Of course, the heroes eventually end up turning things around and beating Thanos by using his own hubris against him, but the Infinity Gauntlet will always be remembered as a book that made the demigod a true force to be reckoned with, and one of my personal favorite reads. There you have it, guys, my personal favorite fights in comics. I'm sure I've missed a few classic moments, so why don't you tell me in the comments section down below what your favorite comic book fights are. Please, I'm really dying to hear what you guys have to say. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, it's found in the description below. I do weekly reviews of hardcovers, trade paperbacks, and things like that, guys. And if you want to support this channel and this content and get exclusive videos not seen anywhere else, you can find that in the Patreon link down below. For as little as $5 a month, you get a whole bunch of stuff. Love you guys. Have a great week. Bye.